Hi, this is Stefan Bayer and this is part 2 of my blockchain security video course. And in this episode I'll just talk a bit about smart contract security without getting into too much detail, but just to explain a little bit on what the issues are and why there is a security risk with smart contracts. So let's just get started. So smart contracts are programs that execute on the blockchain. Let's define them like this quickly. And they've got some characteristics, they've got some properties. The first one is that they're publicly accessible. Anyone involved in the blockchain can read a smart contract and figure out what is going on. And they usually hold some value. So a smart contract on the blockchain either implements some form of token or value or moves value around. There are exceptions, of course, but usually there's some form of value involved. And the smart contract can actually have a balance which can be attacked or removed if there are security issues. And importantly, they're immutable, which is obviously very important for smart contracts to work. Once a smart contract is deployed, it shouldn't be possible to change the terms of a contract. But it also means that it's very difficult to fix bugs, as the only way to do this is to redeploy a new version of the smart contract on a different address, to a different address. And that's not always possible, for example, with a token when it's already in use. So these properties combined make them very useful for certain applications, but they also mean that they are a big target for cyber security criminals or bad actors. And just sort of to drive this home, here's a list of incidents that I find interesting. Now, back in 2016, we first realized that there was a problem with smart contract security when the DAO incident happened. Now, if you don't know about this, I urge you to read up on the DAO hack. It's a very interesting incident with smart contract security that we're still feeling the effects now. Caused a big split in the community. But anyway, there was a bug in the smart contract, that meant that there was a reentrancy vulnerability. Which we will discuss in a future video in more detail. But the important part here is that there was the first big incident and an estimated $70 million was lost. Now that number, again, take that with a pinch of salt. It depends which article you're reading, and usually it depends on the exchange rate at the time of writing. But again, a lot of money was lost. And in 2017, there was an incident with a parity multi-signature smart contract. Actually, there was a second incident involving that smart contract code base, which meant that $300 million of startups money or funds in general were frozen. And that was an interesting case, because there was a library contract that was invoked directly, and that was sort of a behavior that the writers of the code didn't anticipate, and it sort of managed to kill the library. So the funds are still there. They're just, the companies that own them just can't get to them, and it's of significance because Parity is one of the big players in the Ethereum ecosystem. And that code was given as open source, and people used it because it was from Parity, from one big company that supposedly knew what they were doing, and then it turned out to be not that secure. I listed this Spunk Chain incident here in 2018, last year, the end of last year, where only $40,000 were lost, and but I still listed it because it's interesting that it was a reentrancy attack again. And the vulnerability there was exactly the same vulnerability that was already present in the DAO attack more than 2 years earlier. I just listed it to show that we haven't really learned much in terms of how to write secure smart contracts. And then the final incident I noted here was in 2019, earlier this year, when we tried to do the Ethereum Constantinople update. And that actually had to be postponed for a few days because of how it would affect smart contract security. And what happened there was that previously deployed smart contracts could have become unsecure because of one of the updates to the underlying protocol. Now, I find this very interesting because it means we can deploy a smart contract now, and some changes to the underlying protocol in the future might actually make them insecure. Now, in this particular case, the issue would have still involved violation of some best practice guidelines, but still, these contracts were previously supposed to be secure. Fortunately, we the community, someone realized on time, and the update was slightly changed, and nothing happened. But again, very interesting incident. So here's just some numbers from my own experience. This is statistics from 2018. In that year, I audited 22 projects, which included basic projects such as ERC20 tokens, some occasional ICO, but there were also more complex projects. There were prediction markets, STO platforms, full investment funds. There's quite a wide range of interesting code. And here's a list of the number of issues I found. Now, I distinguish between critical, major, and minor issues. Minor issues are small mistakes where you don't follow best practice, but not necessarily immediately exploitable. And major issues are big mistakes which might definitely be exploitable, but usually I haven't fully figured out how to do that yet. But given enough time, someone would be able to exploit it probably. And critical issues are exploitable vulnerabilities. Someone will definitely lose money. So in the 22 projects, there were 16 critical issues, 16 major issues, and 36 minor issues. Now, obviously, these numbers were not distributed linearly. There were projects that were had better quality code, and projects that were really poor. But the interesting fact was there was not a single flawless project. So not a single one of these 22 projects didn't have any issues. And these are not just my own numbers. You often, when I do a smart contract audit, I actually interact with other smart contract auditors, and usually there are often there are 3 independent audits where 3 different auditors provide their results, and they coincide. So it's not just me inventing issues. They're generally real issues found by several people. So these numbers just show that it's very difficult to get smart contracts right. And what's the solution to this? Well, the obvious solution is to get an independent smart contract audit, if possible several. It has to be someone that wasn't involved in the development of the code, just because fresh eyes always see more. It has to be someone that is an expert in smart contract security. And, this is not cheap, but it's cheaper than most incidents, and it's also relatively cheap compared to the marketing budget most of these blockchain projects have. And actually getting a really good audit report can be very effective marketing. So anyway, get your smart contracts audited. That's all for now.